James Purdy wrote a great short story called About a Beard, and it's about a guy's beard. There's this guy, he goes back to visit his parents and he's wearing a beard, and his parents don't like his beard. His mum really wants him to shave it off and he doesn't want to shave off his beard, and in the end he shaves off his beard. That's all that happens. The story's several thousand words long, and that really is the main conflict. I'll show you just the start of it. Mrs. Zeller opposed her son's beard. She was in her house in Florida when she saw him wearing it for the first time. It was as though her mind had come to a full stop. This large, full-bearded man entered the room, and she remembered always later how ugly he had looked and how frightened she felt seeing him in the house. Then the realisation it was someone she knew, and finally the terror of recognition. He had kissed her, which he didn't often do, and she recognised in this his attempt to make her discomfort the more painful. He held the beard to her face for a long time. Then he released her, as though she had suddenly disgusted him. "Why did you do it?" she asked. She was, he saw, almost broken by the recognition. "I didn't dare tell you and come." "That's of course true," Mrs. Zeller said. "It would have been worse. You'll have to shave it off, of course. Nobody must see you. Your father, of course, didn't have the courage to warn me. But I knew something was wrong the minute he entered the house ahead of you. I suppose he's upstairs laughing now, but it's not a laughing matter." Mrs. Zeller's anger turned against her absent husband as though all error began and ended with him. "I suppose he likes it." Her dislike of Mr. Zeller struck her son as staggeringly great at that moment. He looked at his mother and was surprised to see how young she was. She did not look much older than he did. Perhaps she looked younger now that he had his beard. "I had no idea a son of mine would do such a thing," she said. "But why a beard, for heaven's sake?" she cried, as though he had chosen something permanent and irreplaceable which would destroy all that they were. "Is it because you are an artist?" "No, don't answer me," she commanded. "I can't stand to hear any explanation from you." "I've always wanted a beard," her son said. "I remember wanting one as a child." "I don't remember that at all," Mrs. Zeller said. "I remember it quite well. I was in the summer house near that old broken-down wall, and I told Ellen Whitelaw I wanted to have a beard when I grew up." "Ellen Whitelaw? That big, fat, stupid thing. I haven't thought of her in years." Mrs. Zeller was almost as much agitated by the memory of Ellen Whitelaw as by her son's beard. "You didn't like Ellen Whitelaw," her son told her, trying to remember how they had acted when they were together. "She was a common and inefficient servant," Mrs. Zeller said, more quietly now, masking her feelings from her son. "I suppose he liked her." The son pretended surprise, the cool, cynical tone coming into his voice. "Oh, your father," Mrs. Zeller said. "Did he then?" the son asked. "Didn't he like all of them?" she asked. The beard had changed this much already between them. She talked to him now about his father's character, while the old man stayed up in the bedroom fearing a scene. "Didn't he always?" she repeated, as though appealing to this new hirsute man. Now that's about a fifth of the story. It carries on like that and really nothing else happens. They argue about the beard and in the end the son shaves it off. It's not a particularly lyrical story. It's told in quite simple language, and yet it's a very powerful story. Exciting even. Altogether it's a lot more interesting than any story about a guy's beard has any right to be. How come? Well, the first thing that we can note is that Purdy adopts a classic story structure. He applies Chekhov's razor. The story starts when the son arrives wearing his beard. It doesn't start with the son travelling home on the train or with the mother tending geraniums waiting for him to arrive. It starts when it starts. And it's absolutely focused on this one conflict. Right from the opening line, Mrs. Zeller opposed her son's beard. This conflict is maintained and it's escalated. The argument gets fiercer and fiercer until we get to a climactic moment at which point the son hacks off the beard, leaving cuts in his face, and he comes down and he shouts at his parents, "I hate and despise what both of you have done to yourselves, but the thought that you would be sitting here in your middle-class crap, not even speaking to one another, is too much even for me. That's why I did it, I guess, and not out of any love. I don't want you to think that." And the story ends a few lines later. But the other thing I wanted to mention is that whatever your story's about, that thing has to really, really matter to the characters. Even if it wouldn't matter to anyone else, it has to matter to the characters. Suppose the story goes like this. The son comes home wearing his beard, and the mum says, "Oh, I don't know if that beard really suits you." And the son says, "You're probably right, I'll shave it off in the morning." That's not very exciting. The story works because this beard obviously has real significance. It really matters. The mother is disgusted, terrified, afraid of him with his beard. The father pleads with him to shave it off. He says, "Don't you see how it is? She doesn't speak to either of us now, and if you're still wearing the beard when you leave, it's me she will be punishing 6 months from now." Why? Why? It's just a beard, right? Why would anyone get so het up about a beard? And yet, when you think about it, maybe it's not just a beard. See, there's a lot of evidence in the story that the Zellers have a really unhappy marriage. There's a suggestion that perhaps Mr. Zeller was unfaithful with his servant Ellen Whitelaw. Maybe he was unfaithful with a lot of servants. Clearly there's no real love between Mr. and Mrs. Zeller. Well, why have they stuck together all this time? For certain traditional values. Because they believe that good appearances are important and shouldn't get divorced. And for their child, their little boy. Maybe Mrs. Zeller's sacrificed everything to bring this boy up well, to bring him up to share her values. And now he comes home. It's not enough that he goes off to New York and decides he wants to be an artist. But he comes home and not only does he not share their values, not only is he not grateful for everything that they've done for him, but he actively wants to rub it in their face. He literally rubs his hideous beard in his face, flaunting his lifestyle as some bohemian artist with his hippie friends and pouring contempt on everything that they've lived for. No wonder she wants him to shave off this horrible, horrible beard. But then see it from the son's point of view. This child who never made him happy, and he's terrified. He's terrified that he's going to end up like his parents, in some dead-end marriage, just living this awful bourgeois existence, just caring only about appearances and outdated values. He doesn't want that. He's out of there. He's out of that unhappy home, and he's never going back. And this beard is a symbol of his independence, not just for him, but for his entire generation. He's free, and this beard shows that he's his own person, and he's not going to shave it off. So this beard really, really matters. And Ernest Hemingway used to talk about the Iceberg Principle. The idea that only 1/10 of a story is visible above the surface. And there's a lot more meaning that rests underneath the water. You know, when people say, we always seem to argue about nothing in particular, what they're really saying is that when we argue, we do not refer explicitly to what we're arguing about. Maybe we're not even conscious of what we're arguing about. And this is something very important for writers to remember. Thanks for watching, and good luck with your writing.